quickly give you just a little information about HEC Paris altogether. First of all, I'm Jen T with Aringo. We are an MBA admissions consulting firm. We've been around for about 20 years. We were founded by a Wharton alum, so we do take a team-based approach to helping people with their applications. So if you decide along the way while you're applying to schools and you're interested in some assistance, we're here to help. All right, so we'll first talk about HEC Paris, a little bit about, kind of what they have going on. And then from there, we'll jump into the application itself. So you'll see me kind of toggling between different screens. But a little bit that I feel like you guys should kind of know about HEC before we start is that they have both a fall and a January intake. So that's really exciting, especially if you feel like you're a little bit off, or you're like, oh man, I want to start sooner than later, or maybe I want a backup plan. It's really great to go to a school that has these two options. With this, I also feel like it gives you an even broader network that you're going to be able to network with throughout your entire MBA experience, and then obviously beyond, and have a little bit more personal connection. They do allow you to customize your program, and it can be from 12 months to 16 months. It is located just outside of Paris, which is obviously a fashion capital, but also a business hub. So you're going to have access to all types of different businesses that will give you great insights for your case studies, practical learning throughout the program. So it's definitely a really exciting place. Plus, it's centrally located, so you can travel and get to see a lot of Europe and UK while you're there during your MBA. They do have an extensive list of electives compared to a lot of other MBA programs, 150 of them. HEC Paris is also often considered one of the least expensive two-year MBA programs, with the tuition coming in around 102,000 euros for the program. They do offer a couple of different scholarships. They're listed here, but that's a really cool part that we'll also jump into during the application. Is there's actually a part for some scholarship information before you submit your application. The average class is just under 300. So again, when you're overlapping a January, a fall during your 2 years at HEC, even though it's technically a little bit of a smaller class than maybe like a Harvard or Stanford with 1,000 people in your section, this gives you that opportunity to have close one-on-one conversations and experiences and relationships with your cohort, but then also get to overlap with people in other classes as well. The average salary is around 109,000 per year, which is in dollars. I'm not sure why we have that difference, but anyways, so not far from what the tuition is. So, if we're talking about ROI, hopefully can recoup that really quickly. It is about 95% international. So that is the coolest thing, is that, a lot of people talk about INSEAD being international, LBS being international, but actually most of the schools in Europe and UK are going to be highly international, which is something that makes the programs pretty unique and your experience even more diverse. The average GMAT score is about 690 or 635 on the focus. And so that also gives you a little bit more leeway when you are thinking of like, oh man, like, do I have to have like a 675 to be competitive? You can kind of say like, okay, like I can be competitive for a top MBA program. And then usually the average years of work experience are 6 years, but they will accept 2 or, well, actually, technically there's not a work requirement that they say for a minimum, but they prefer 2 years. And it's about 40% female. It was founded, the MBA program was founded in 1969. So you do have a historically strong MBA program with a very historically well-positioned college of HEC Paris. Beyond that, like I think the other bigger thing to kind of look at this is, there are a lot of student clubs and activities on campus for you to be part of. And so making sure to express those different parts of you during your application are going to be imperative to really showing that connection and fit with the school. Beyond that, HEC Paris really hasn't fell below a top 10 ranking almost ever, but for the most part, it's ranking, well, okay, I say that and now I look, I'm like, oh, top 12. So it hasn't been beyond top 12, any lower than 12 on the rankings, and oftentimes is either 1, 2, or 3 as far as Financial Times goes. So just keep in mind, it is a top ranked program, worth the investment. And so for deadlines, this is something that's also a little bit interesting about HEC Paris is that they have deadlines almost every month. So a lot of the times people are really concerned about round 1, round 2, and like, oh gosh, what do I do? Like I can't apply again. And if I miss round 1 in September, then I can't apply again until January. But with HEC Paris, you apply at the optimal time. And I think that that's really something different that gives them an edge over some other schools, because you don't have to wait to, get started and hopefully be on your way to finding out if you get admitted. All right, so things that they require is that you have, if you have a MIM, from a qualified or a top ranked program or a master's in management, then you can qualify for a test waiver. You must have completed undergrad at an accredited school or have proof of that. They don't have, again, a requirement for the minimum years of work experience, but 2 is the preference. And then if you don't have an undergraduate degree, which is really cool, there is a potential way for you to still apply and get admitted to HEC Paris. And I love this like one line that if you're an athlete who's represented your country on a national level, you could be exempt from having to have a degree. So interesting. As far as the application, again, like to submit and be ready for review, complete the application form. There are 5 essays, and we'll look at those soon. 2 recommendation letters. You'll need to have your resume, not like the boring CV. They do ask for a photo, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Transcripts from all of your schools, even if it was like studied abroad. Sorry, it's not very fun to get those transcripts, but they need them. Passport or birth certificate, an official exam score from the GMAT, GRE, or the executive assessment, which again is like a little caveat for something different for HEC Paris. They do require an English proficiency exam if you didn't learn in English during your college degree, and then the 200 euros for your application fee. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to jump out really quickly, and I am going to share the application screen so that we can look at what is required for the HEC Paris application. Okay, so I'm going to come back out and go back in as if I have not been in there yet today. And we will continue editing. Hopefully it jumps to the front so that we don't have to go backwards, but if it does, we'll be good. All right, so we'll just go back a couple of screens. Sorry about that. Okay, so while I'm doing this, please know that you can put your questions into the chat session so that we can make sure to answer them by the end of the session, and we'll be good to go. All right, so this is the HEC Paris application form. You have to create your ID and get kind of initiated into their world by signing up for it. Afterwards, you will see that it is a very easy step-by-step process. You can start the application and come back in and out, but one thing to know is that you do have to fill out information to be able to move to the next step. Not all applications are that way. So like if I was jumping in and being like, oh my gosh, I just want to see what the essays are, I have to fill out all the information to get to the bottom. So just an FYI. So this is a very easy, like, this is what you're going to need to be able to complete this application. Obviously read over it, make sure that you don't have any questions there. Then you're going to choose your start date. So again, they do have multiple fall start dates in here and spring. So all I would say is make sure you're conscious of what you're selecting before you jump in. Just make sure you're picking the right thing, because there is an option to pick something that's not right. And then have you applied before? And the only thing that you should know is that you may have to explain, or you should explain, why you're reapplying. And then how did you hear about HEC Paris? So this helps them with deciding on their marketing plans for the next, cycle or year, what's working, what's not working. All right, personal details, same as everything else. So now contact details. So it is important to make sure that you're putting everything in here that's accurate, because they will email you things and they will potentially mail you some information, but this is also the address they're going to use when they send you official like admissions materials. So or like congratulations, that whole like you've been admitted packet, like that's going to go to that address. So make sure it's good to go. Okay, academic background. So this is where you're going to put in very easily the school that you went to, first the country, the institution. Now, this is kind of different from other schools, is that it's not asking you to put in your like GPA or anything like that. So that's a unique quality that you don't have to go through that process for them. They're going to do their own calculations, their own rubric for determining what your CGPA, whether it's percent first class on a 4.0 or 7-point scale, whatever it is, they're going to figure it out on their own. They're not going to ask you to pretend to understand everything. So you will just obviously fill this out and go from there. And then they do have some partner universities. So if this is something that you need to fill out, you kind of are already aware of what they're talking about. So if you don't know what they're talking about, you could put not applicable. And then, like if you plan to do a dual degree, obviously this is your place. This is like one of those questions where a lot of people are like, what do I do, Jen? And so are you applying to other MBA programs? Now, if you say no, then you don't have to put anything down, but does it look weird? Well, I don't know. And if you're saying that HEC Paris is your #1 school, the only place you want to go to, but yet you fill this out, so you want to make sure there's congruency between what you're saying and what you're putting on here, so that the schools, feel like they are getting an authentic response from you. So you could obviously list other schools that you're interested in, and I would say that they're always almost going to assume that you're applying to like LBS and NCOD for the most part, just because those are like their peer of the top 3 programs in Europe, UK. So there's almost an assumption of that. So it's okay if you put them there. It's okay if you put 1 or 2 from your home country. That'll be okay too. And then down here is, tell us why you're applying to these other programs. I think the best answer is typically going to be, it's a backup plan, right? Like I know that I want to go to an MBA program starting this fall, 2026. And if I was not to get into HEC Paris, this is where I would hope to go as my next best choice. As I mentioned, this is one of those applications where they do not let you progress unless you fill out the information. So just remember that. So you'll put in your languages here, English test if you need it, and then the test. So this is my only caveat, is that I went through this, and even though their page says that you can do the executive assessment, there's technically not a toggle for the executive assessment here. I would put it in the GMAT and then put in your score. and kind of go from there. And then this other question here, right? Like, do you plan to retake it? So I would be honest in this. Like, so if you are thinking of retaking it, you can put yes. And then that's kind of on their radar of like, if you know that you're slightly below the average GMAT score or GRE score, you know that they're like, oh, okay, well, maybe they'll have a better score soon. And maybe that means instead of being, not offered an interview, being waitlisted. So, this is something that you maybe want to consider. Okay, so next we will jump into your personal experience. So again, some unique caveats about the MBA, about the HEC Paris application is that it's only going to ask you for your current company. It doesn't have an opportunity to add more. So interesting there. You, if there's a subsidiary, any other like company information you need to include, you can put that there. Company or your job description, I would utilize the bullet points from your resume or something very similar, because again, this is your opportunity to market yourself and share who you are and what you've accomplished. And this is one of those areas. Now, for your career goals, again, like you don't want to put something super generic. There's only a 200-word limit here. So you don't want to be too flowery in your language, but you also want to be a little bit more specific than I want to move into consulting. I want to leverage my experience working in FMCG to help other companies be able to expand globally through consulting, management consulting, or something like that, right? So you want to be a little bit more pointed in that. The next place that it's going to ask is about your financing. And it's so interesting that US schools don't always ask about this, but European, UK schools do. So it's always interesting about like, how are you planning to pay or finance for your degree? And so you have some room to kind of share what you wanted to do. I just filled in the blank for right now. All right, so this is another moment where earlier we talked about 95% of the class is going to be international. So for INSEAD, LBS, HEC Paris, I would even say like Cambridge, Oxford, and even like other European schools, I would make sure that you're expressing your international experience in the best possible way, highlighting it in your resume, but then also highlighting it obviously here. So you don't have to be specifically talking about international exposure whenever you were professional. So again, like if you have childhood residencies, holidays, exchange programs, absolutely list them here. This is your opportunity to do so. So you would talk a little bit about like the time that you did this and then the description of what it is. Like even if it was holiday, you maybe want to emphasize that you immerse yourself in the local culture by going to town every day or, asking locals about X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, be able to show that enrichment that you've had and not just like, oh, I stayed at a resort and I like just stayed in that bubble and I didn't do anything else. Okay, so extracurriculars, really quickly. This is your time to kind of shine with those 300 different student clubs and activities. This is where you can make a connection. And also it's an opportunity for the school to see where that can be or what you could do or be part of while you're at HEC Paris. It also gives them an opportunity if they wanted to connect you with a specific alum or current student or something like that, they can use this information to help with recruitment and retention. Okay, so you would add this information here, obviously like time period, etc. Once in a while, I have somebody who will ask me like, oh, I've played basketball, like rec basketball for the past 10 years. Okay, well, that's fine. Like go ahead and put in like January of, 2016 to now, like ongoing. And then you could just say, actively part of a rec basketball team. and then add that information, and then you can add other ones. And so I don't think you need to add every tiny little detail about yourself, but you do want to make sure that you are teaching them something new about you. Okay, so moving on to the essays. This is your time to shine. This is obviously my favorite part. And so will you keep me on track? Like if we are getting close to time, let me know so that we have like 10 minutes for that Q&A, okay? Because I can talk too much, a lot. So, I've put the word limits in here. They're not listed in the essays. So so you have an idea, you can do a screenshot of this if you feel like you need to save this for later. But, HEC wants to know, why are you applying to them and why now? So this is like kind of that impetus of saying, this is the point in my career where I need to make this move and get to this next part or phase or whatever it might be. So you want to, really address the entire question, not just why are you applying to HEC Paris, but why now? And then next you want to talk about, what's your most significant life achievement? And that doesn't have to be professional. It can be personal. It can be sports related, academic related. It can be personal on some other level, but just know that you don't have to be inside of a box, that they do allow you to kind of be outside of that, and they want to get to know you. So if you have something that's not necessarily the most traditional of like, I launched a campaign with 3,000 followers, et cetera, like, it's okay. You can talk about starting a local book club, and that grew from 5 to 25 people over the course of a year. Like, that's okay too. So then beyond that, you want, the next one is going to be talking about your leadership and ethics. And this is an important moment to know that it's okay in an MBA admissions application to talk about failure. So let's say that there was a moment where maybe somebody was unethical, or maybe what you did was unethical, or you didn't realize that it's okay to talk about what happened and what you learned. A lot of the times people feel like it always has to be such an achievement driven process, but it can also be about what you've learned and the hard lessons that you've learned. Sometimes you don't realize that you're in a situation where it's maybe not the best thing to be doing. So it's okay if you decide to do something a little bit outside of that box as well. Okay, so the fourth essay is really interesting. What would be an entirely different life you've led? And so this is that moment to say, I've always enjoyed gymnastics. And if I didn't go to university, I would have, taken the gymnastics world by storm and competed on a global level, traveling all over, doing X, Y, and Z, right? Like, this is that opportunity to talk about that and to be creative and have some fun. And again, so many times throughout this application, they're letting you share more about who you are and your personality. So this is one of those moments. And then the optional essay, you have 3 different ones that you can choose from. What monument would you visit? What book or movie or play would you choose? And then what figure do you most admire? So there's not one answer that's better than the other to choose, but choose the one that you feel like you have enough to talk about in 250 words, and what you want them to learn about you, your passion for X, Y, and Z. So it's exciting. And then the last part is is there anything else that we need to know about you? You could, take this opportunity to talk about being a first generation, that you grew up in a military family, or if there's something else that you feel like, I really think that this is important for my identity as an MBA applicant, this is your opportunity to share it with them. And I think sometimes people are worried about some part of their application and they want to share it. And that's okay. Like, let's say that you had a hiccup, your GPA was lower, something like that happened. It's more important to say, this happened, this is what I learned, and this is how things have gotten better or how I've implemented change. So, that's kind of advice for that last essay question. All right, we're almost done, I promise. So this other part, which is really exciting because HEC Paris does have different opportunities for scholarship. They will give you the opportunity to share more information for these specific scholarships if you want to be considered for them. And there's word limits, etc. And these are a little bit particular. But if you don't feel like, I don't know if any of these scholarships are going to really fit with me, don't worry. Once you submit your application and if you're admitted, they will send you to a kind of like a scholarship portal for you to be able to submit more for scholarship afterwards. So don't feel like this is your only opportunity and you're like, wow, I don't know how I fit in with the Forte scholarship for women. That's not really who I am, like if it's a moment of like, this doesn't make sense to me, it's okay. You don't have to fill them out if it doesn't feel like a good fit. All right. So beyond that, they do require 2 recommendations. And so we get this question all the time. Who should I have write my letter of recommendation? The CEO or my director? The answer is whoever knows you best and can answer the questions that they're asked. This is, important because these schools are looking for they're looking for qualitative feedback, not something generic that says, oh, I'm the CEO of a million people company and I don't really know John that well, but HR says that he's doing great. He's had 2 promotions or whatever it might be. You want somebody who can really talk to, I've seen this person consistently rise above. There's typically also a question that says like, tell us a time when you've had to provide critical or constructive feedback and how did they take it and how did they implement it? So your CEO is probably not going to know that unless you have that kind of relationship. So that's what I would also take from this. Now, I will say you cannot get to the next screen without filling in this information and sending your reference letters. So just know that like the next couple of pages on this application are not vital for you to have. So if you're not ready, you haven't asked your recommenders, do not pass go, do not move to the next screen because it will send them automatically to whoever you have in these referrals. And then this is the last bit. It's uploading these documents that are required between your CV, your unofficial test scores, your unofficial transcripts, copies of your birth certificate, passport, that photo. So there's 2 reasons for it. One is, European schools, they kind of typically do require a photo. It's just something that's a little bit different from US schools, but also because you will have 2 alumni that will interview you. And it's a bit of a verification process of like, you look like the picture you provided in your application. If somebody looks completely different, then it's a little bit of a red flag to say, oh, this is maybe not the right person. And then, so you upload these documents and then, so again, you have to upload them or you don't get to go to the next thing, but that would be submitting your application fee and finalizing your application. So that is the HEC Paris application. All right, so Sejul, like, how are we doing? We got a lot of questions?
We have a couple for sure. I'll take that one. I'll take them one by one for you.
Perfect.
The first question being, hi Jen, thank you for the information, really insightful. Just a question: is round 3 still a good one to potentially receive a scholarship?
For HEC Paris, yes. Because it's it's not the it's I'm sorry, because HEC Paris round 3 is like round 1.2 for them. So I would definitely I would say like definitely do round 3. There's no questions about that. I think when you start to get worried for HEC Paris about scholarship, we're going to be talking about the ones that are like 1 to 2 months before the program actually starts. And still, most of the time, there's some movement with scholarship in general, where scholarship people are granted scholarships, but then they decline their offer. So then that money goes back in the pot. So, I wouldn't say you absolutely will not get scholarship in the last couple of rounds, but it's definitely more likely towards the front. And I would say like during the first 6, 7 deadlines for HEC Paris, for other schools like round 1, round 2 for sure.
Awesome. All right. The next question is by Imani. The question says, any recommendation for applicants from America with 8 to 10 years professional experience and on the upper side of age range, 35 now, 36 at program start? Also, does executive certificates from HEC Paris, in your experience, help make up from low distant GPA in undergraduate from global tier 1 university?
Whoa, a lot of questions in that one. Okay, so here's what I'll say is that with HEC Paris, their average years of work experience is 6, which means that there's a bell curve on both directions. So the beauty of HEC Paris is that they also do profile evaluations. So you can send over your resume and they will give you feedback. Don't worry, it's not going to be included in your application review. So if it's a outdated or not the best, don't feel like it has to be application ready. But you can send it over and see what they have to say. And that includes your GPA and your GMAT GRE scores too. So they'll give you some feedback on that of like, we would advise you to retake it or not retake it. But they will give you feedback about your specific profile. When we edge out to that like 8 to 10 years, the question is this MBA going to deliver the right material that's not redundant to what you've already done? And are you going to be able to get a job that's going to meet what your next step should be, right? Like, are they going to be able to deliver at the same level, or are you going to have to take a couple of steps down, which is sometimes okay as long as you understand that you're pivoting into a new direction and that's what's going to happen and it's on the horizon. So I think I answered most of that. As far as being able to counterbalance a lower GPA or even a GMAT GRE score or executive assessment, sometimes those classes can help. I will tell you that each school has their own preference of which classes they feel like help the best. And again, like you can do that profile evaluation and they can give you a little bit of information. They almost always reply with happy to discuss this even further in a phone call or something like that. So you have that opportunity to get that specific feedback for you. But doing those quantitative classes is going to be the best thing that they will want. So if it's a communications certificate, that might not help. But if it's, something quantitative, financial, accounting, analytical, like that can be helpful.
Perfect. All right. So the next question is by Nitish, and he asks, can we go for Jan 26 intake if GMAT focus score is 655, considering we are in the last couple of rounds for Jan intake and there might be more filtering?
Yeah. So I have people that are still applying to HEC Paris for Jan intake. Now, some people's visas didn't get granted. So that is part of their process too, as to why they're pivoting to Jan 26. So again, like my biggest thing is reach out to the admissions committee because they'll give you a feel of like if things are full, not full. So I don't think that there's harm in applying for January 26th. And if you don't get in, reapplying. So if January 26th is your optimal, go for it, apply. And again, like I would have some direct conversation with them to see if they're still recruiting actively to fill a lot of seats or a few seats, and they should give you that kind of feedback.
Awesome. The next question is by Gustavo, and he asks, what about the living and current costs once we move to Paris?
Yeah, so that's definitely something to take into account. I'll be honest, I do not live in Paris. I am an outside entity of HEC Paris, so I don't have exact information personally, but they do have a lot of that information on their website. But even better than that, reach out to somebody from one of the clubs that resonates with you, even if it's like somebody from badminton. Like reach out to them and say like, hey, I'm interested in applying to HEC, like I'm excited about this, but I wanted to know more about the living expenses and cost. There's a financial section on the MBA website that should tell you what the typical estimated cost of living is during the program, but they'll give you much more about that, as well as ways to fund that, where to live, etc.
All right, perfect. Moving on to the next question. It's by Deanna, and the question says, what about mentioning scholarships as the main source of financing?
So if you have scholarships granted to you from some outside entity, fantastic. I think that if you're talking about scholarships to help supplement your education, I think that all schools know that everybody's hopeful that they'll get scholarships to cover tuition, but being able to say like my goal is to seek and earn scholarships to help cover the cost. However, I'm aware that to fill the gap, I will have to take a loan. Like if you don't have savings, or if you don't have enough savings, right? Like, so you can, say like I have like X number of dollars saved, and I'm hoping to fill that gap mostly with scholarships, but ultimately know that I might have to take out a loan to help pay for it.
Perfect. Okay. The next question is by Farhan, and he asks, is international exposure experience a mandatory criteria? Will it be a deal breaker if there's none?
Okay, so it's not a deal breaker, but if you have worked on virtual teams, worked with counterparts from other parts of the world or different countries, or even somebody on your team, that's helpful because ultimately you're going to be thrown into an MBA program assigned to random teams. Nobody's going to be the leader, and they want you to be able to jump in and be able to navigate those cultural differences rather easily, right? Like they want you to even just have a general awareness of like, hey, like not everybody is going to speak up front, or some people will have a tendency to speak more, or whatever this might be. They want you to have this awareness so that you know how to communicate across these different cultures, and being able to demonstrate that helps them with being more confident about your ability to be a strong member of the cohort and to be successful in their MBA program.
Perfect. Awesome. The next question is by Jay, and the question says, how can I prove that my UG and PG was in English? My PG Masters is from a UK university. Am I liable for a IELTS or a TOEFL waiver?
So I'm going to answer this broadly and don't hold me to it, but if it's from the UK, you should be fine. If your undergrad was taught in English, typically it will say that in your transcripts somewhere. If it's like a lot of Indian candidates in their transcripts, it will say, all courses were delivered in English, and that is usually good enough for the program itself. If that is not demonstrated somewhere within your transcripts, then you can figure out, like, reach out to HEC Paris to figure out how you can give them further verification.
Perfect. All right. The next question is, Paris being fashion capital, are there enough opportunities for students who will have tech as their major?
Yeah. So yes, obviously, like it's the fashion capital, but it is a nice, it is a strong business hub. And so there are large corporations, MNCs, and even European slash French companies that are based straight from there that are going to be in all different sectors. And so my best advice is to just Google HEC Paris employment report, and that PDF should come right up. You can download it and see what the typical employers are. And not only that, but like how many people are typically going to that specific sector and what kind of roles they're getting. And then if you want it even more than that, because I think this is a great thing to do this time, like the time that we're in where everybody's like, oh, there's not jobs in this or that. Oh, MBA, is it worth it? Talk to a current student. Look for the HEC Paris Tech Club and reach out to somebody who's part of that club and say, hey, I wanted to find out for real what's going on. Where are people getting hired? What do salaries look like? How long is it taking you to get a job offer? You can ask them directly and they can give you that feedback and honest answers.
Awesome. All right. The next question is by Ashwarya, and it says, for the second essay, most significant life achievement, does it really mean that we should write about only one instance, or can we take the liberty to add two?
If they're connected, that makes sense. Like if it was, I started a club that was focused on women in business while I was in undergraduate school, and then later was able to establish it as a community for career women in their careers, professional women, whatever. Like if there's a connection, yes. Otherwise, part of the essays is your ability to edit and take direction and give what is asked for. So I would only do it if it was connected to one or the other. Beyond that, choose one.
Perfect. I think we'll just take the last question. Um, can we list virtual international experience like working virtually with teams from other countries?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's very common, especially post-COVID. They're not always expecting you to have traveled to the other countries to get this experience. Everybody went virtual. So at this point, you can definitely talk about my main counterparts are based out of X, Y, and Z, and I work with them on a daily basis, working on budget, projects, plans, whatever it might be.
Awesome. I think that's our time. And
Awesome.
actually, most of the other questions are similar to what were already asked. So I think you've mostly covered everything. So yeah, I think that's about it for us. Thank you everyone for joining the session, the HEC Paris session at the application walkthrough, and a big thank you to Jennifer for her valuable insights and the guidance. I hope this session was helpful, and we hope that you feel more comfortable while preparing your applications. And yes, a very best of luck to everyone who's going to apply. And we will look forward to hosting more sessions like this for you and seeing you in our future events. All right.
Excellent. Thanks, Sejal.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody. Good luck.
Bye bye.